morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the depths of the Middle Swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. First, let me begin by explaining why we didn't have an episode yesterday. You would think, with all the buildup of this super special investigative committee, that they would want to take care of that first thing yesterday. But you would be mistaken, because Cheyenne does not exist in the real world. Now, obviously, the town exists in the real world, but it doesn't function like that, because mostly you're dealing with politicians. So common sense and normal, everyday you and me thinking doesn't happen here. And actually, many times, it's the opposite of what you would think should happen. And that is exactly what took place yesterday. So I thought, well, the investigative committee will release their results, and then I can come back to the mobile studio and I could finish up the episode. But that didn't happen. In fact, nothing happened until about 6:30 last night. When they finished the day's legislation, Art Washut got up and delivered the findings of his investigation. Pretty much, it's everything we already knew. No laws were broken, and not even a rule was broken, because there weren't any rules about that. But here's part of what he had to say.
Dissemination and receipt of campaign contributions on the floor of the House is highly unusual and perhaps unprecedented in the history of the state. Were it not for the actions of Rebecca Bextel on the House floor, the subsequent disruptions of the House calendar and public uproar would not have occurred. Under certain statutorily defined circumstances, a campaign contribution may constitute bribery. Taken together, the evidence collected and testimony given did not reveal a violation of Article 3, Section 42 or 43 of the Wyoming Constitution. Taken together, the evidence collected and the testimony given did not reveal an explicit violation of any specific rule of the House of Representatives or joint rule of the Senate and the House of Representatives. Despite the findings above, the committee recognizes that the conduct that occurred on the House floor was undesirable and must never occur again. Existing rules, while not specific to the conduct investigated by the committee, when taken as a whole, recognize that the floor of the House of Representatives is a specially designated place, unlike most others. It is an area deserving of particular reverence and respect. Campaign activity on the House floor, even if de minimis or otherwise lawful, may attract heightened scrutiny because of the chamber's institutional and historical significance.
Taken together, everything that Art Washut said after the findings of the committee is moralizing. It's opinion, and it's better fitting a pulpit. What Art Washut and the committee should have said, but didn't, is that a campaign donation is constitutionally protected free speech on the House floor or not. What he also did not say, which is the logical conclusion of all of his moralizing, is that if legislators did not receive a bribe, that also means that Rebecca Bextel did not offer a bribe. Which, of course, she did not, but Art Washut is not going to say that. After Art Washut issued the findings of his investigative committee, there was a bit of debate on the floor. Here's what Representative Jamie Lean had to say.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a couple of questions in reviewing some of the materials, all of the materials that were found for this. Where's the written complaint If there was no written complaint, how did we get to this point? When we talk about Joint Rule 22-1, we're also talking about the very process by which complaints are to be filed and which these are to be handled. Did the committee verify when and how the media was notified? Where is the text message to the media, and why haven't we seen it? Did the committee review the accuser's interview with the media as well? These are the questions that I don't have answers to yet. Thank you.
All good questions, none of which did Art Washut's Super Special Investigative Committee look into. The end of this whole thing is really there's nothing there, and there never has been from the beginning. Now, there was more droning on by Steve Harshman and J.D. Williams, among others, but the events of last night are essentially this. There was never anything here, and that this entire thing was trumped up by Carly Provenza and Mike Yin. Lives were destroyed and reputations were shattered. Now, the Speaker of the House, Chip Nyman, has a pile of complaints on his desk, and he needs to act on them. Those people who destroyed lives and who broke the rules, the only people who broke the rules, must be held accountable. Wyoming citizens are demanding it, and the stack of paper on Chip's desk is evidence of that. This morning on the live program, I went into great detail about it, and I thought that I would just replay that entire show for you, because there's some other news stories in there that I mentioned that are pretty important in and of themselves. So here's what I talked about on this morning's live show. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment of the program. From very high above, all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the, well, no, almost from the base of the Bighorns. Good morning, my friends. Welcome to the program. We're still down in the Middle Swamp for one more program. Can you believe that? It's been an entire month down in the Middle Swamp, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to get back to the Cowboy State Politics headquarters and the lovely Christine and the puppies. And so one more program, and then we'll be back home. First, let me apologize for not getting a podcast out yesterday. I was waiting for the results of the Super Special Investigative Committee, and I thought, why wouldn't you tackle that first off, right out of the gate at the beginning of the day, and then maybe just get it done? No, they didn't do that. They didn't do that at all. They waited until the very, 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 almost the very last thing in the last night's legislative session. So they didn't really release everything until, I don't know what time it was, but 6-ish, 6:30-ish, something like that. But anyway, so this morning we will have a podcast, and it's, I have to tell you, this entire session has been a lesson in what the press is and what they are not. Last night in the House chamber, there was only one media organization. There was only one news organization in the entire House gallery, and it was me. Cowboy State Politics, the Open Range Record, however you want to put it. I was the only person, the only member of the press that was there. Now, of course, they all have their articles written this morning. How, there was no wrongdoing, but it looked really bad. And, we're going to take some steps to fix it. That was the essential parts of Art Washut's report. It was long-winded, and, he did his best to admonish conservatives, though he didn't come out and say it. Essentially, he just said, there's nothing wrong here. But what, it shouldn't happen again, and it looked really bad. That's pretty much it. But it was obvious that the investigative committee didn't go into a whole bunch of different things that perhaps they should have addressed. Like, I don't know, Carly Provenza lying to the committee. The Open Range Record covered that story, in which she gave an interview to the Cow Pie, Jake in the Cow Pie, and in which she told him that she sent that video to the press immediately. Her exact words were, moments after I took the photograph. But when she was in front of the investigative committee, she told them that she consulted a whole bunch of people, including LSO staff and a couple of different legislators, Liz Storr and Katie Talbot, the chief clerk, and Matt Obrecht in the LSO, and then she sent it to the media. There was no investigation of what exactly did the text to the media say. You see, we never saw that in the committee, and you would think that that would be an integral part of their investigation. Art Washut and the committee, they were asked point blank, where is the signed complaint? Because the procedure of this whole thing was to, sign a complaint and give it to the presiding officer of whichever chamber you're in. In this case, it would be the Speaker of the House. But that didn't happen. And the investigative committee did not do any investigative work on that. In fact, pretty much the only thing they focused on was reports from the alleged press. But they weren't in the House gallery last night to see the fruits of their labors. Nope, not. And you would think as much effort as they put in to this whole charade, and that's what it was, really, is a charade. But you would think that out of all of the work they did, all of their efforts, all of the articles that were written, that they would be there to see the crescendo of all of their work. But not a single one of them was there. Why? Because they all knew that it was a sham. Because they all knew that none of this should have happened, and it wouldn't have happened had it not been for them. You see, what this tells you about the Wyoming media is that they are not news, that they are at best yellow journalism propagandists, and that's what they are. Now, about a week ago, well, actually Sunday, so I shouldn't say a week ago, they actually started reporting what the facts were. And they left out all of their innuendo, but not all of it, some of their innuendo and their accusations, and just focused on what was said in that committee meeting. And I ask again, why? Because they all knew that this entire thing was a sham. But there was no Claire McFarland in the House gallery. There was no Maggie Mullen from Wildfile. There was no Jasmine Hall from the Jackson Hole News and Guide, though they are all in Cheyenne. Well, I shouldn't say all. I don't know about Claire McFarland. I haven't seen her for a couple of days. But Jasmine Hall is here. Maggie Mullen was here because I had a wonderful interaction with her yesterday in which I asked her, hey, Maggie, I saw your video. And she says, oh, I don't do social media, David. And I said, well, that's not true, because I saw your video that you did with Wyoming Public Media, and it was, at best, propaganda. Well, what do you mean? And so I had to repeat for her. I don't recall, which is exactly what they played in their video, trying to cast aspersions on everybody who testified in front of that committee, and not giving any sort of allowances that perhaps maybe the House floor is a pretty chaotic place in the evening. Maybe perhaps there was lots of things going on and nobody was paying any attention to, what Carly Provenza was doing, or even what our pal Rebecca was doing. But instead, Maggie Mullen tried to cast it as though everybody was lying, and that was their intention. You see, the press in Wyoming is not news. They don't even come anywhere close to it. And so I have no problem calling them out, of which I have made it a habit of it this session. Jasmine Hall caught my ire last Saturday at the GOP meeting, in which I asked her what exactly it is that you call. What do you call what it is that you do? Because I'm pretty sure it's not journalism. And, with her indignation and her nose stuck slightly in the air, which I suppose that comes from being a venerable non-journalist from the Jackson Hole News and Guide, I suppose that is her general attitude. But I asked her, what is it that you do? Because it's not journalism. And to which she replied, huh? And of course, I was a little irritated, and I have been irritated about this whole thing. I looked at her and I said, well, what you do is BS. Of course, I used the actual term. You see, none of these jackwagons in the press have ever been held accountable for the things that they do. None of them have ever been held to account for the things that they write, because, in general, the press in Wyoming, if you even want to call them that, are all in it together. That's why at the top of all of these articles they've written, it says something to the effect of, this is a joint collaborative effort between the Sheridan Press, the Jackson Hole News and Guide, Wildfile, and everybody else that we can throw into the mix. You see, because they don't do their own work. They're not the ones that come up with their own stories. You see, the history of journalism is that newspapers compete for viewers, for your attention. that compete in trying to get the story right. So that, more people will pay attention to their work as opposed to somebody else's. And that's how it's always been, that you try to get the biggest amount of the market share. And the way that you do that is by telling the truth and being right. Well, unfortunately, the media in Wyoming sees that as a foreign concept. None of them are really interested in getting the story right. None of them are interested in getting the facts correct. In fact, all they're interested in is clicks and hits and views, and that's it. And last night was evidence of it, that none of them sat there and watched what was happening on the floor. None of them took the time to see the fruits of all of their labors. None of them actually wanted to visit with any of the people on the floor. None of them wanted to report about the interaction in the chamber. None of them could tell you the mood of the chamber because none of them were there. It was only me and the Open Range Record. And of course, that's partly my website. So yeah, of course we were there. And we'll be reporting on it. In fact, coming very, very, very soon is a big giant expose on this thing beginning to end. And we're going to call out the people who are guilty. And it's the liberals, it's the Democrats, and it's the Wyoming media. And they absolutely all deserve what they're going to get. Well, my friends, today on the program, and sorry for that little lengthy monologue, but man, I've got to tell you, this whole session has been super, super frustrating. Only, for a lot of different reasons, but mainly that we're the only ones that are reporting the news. I mean, it works out good for us because we're the ones reporting the facts. Like if you go to the front page of the Cow Pie right now, you won't see very many articles about actual pieces of legislation, the things that affect your life. And if you compare that to the front page of the Open Range Record, there's all sorts of stories about bills that died, bills that succeeded, bills that are still in discussion. We're the only ones doing news. And thank you very much for watching. Thanks for paying attention. And thanks for getting the stories right. So on today's program, I've got the phone lines open. And so if you want to be part of the show, we may go a little bit long today. I don't have any idea. We'll just see how it goes. But if you want to be part of the show, the phone number here in the studio to talk to me is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989 if you want to be part of the program. And highly suggest you do. I'm sure you've got a whole bunch of stuff on your mind. So go ahead and give me a call one more time. That phone number is 307-374-8989. Now, one of the big story that we published yesterday is that Senate President Dennis Biteman has allowed a lobbyist access to the House chamber. You see, that's absolutely against the rules. But, we're not really interested in following rules anyway. That whole 22-1 thing and reporting complaints, we're not really interested in any sort of following of the rules. But it would appear that Dennis hasn't been following Rule 15 in the joint rules, and that's the one that says lobbyists do not have access to the legislative chamber. I talked about this last night on the program with Senator Sherry Steinmetz on the Roundup, and she pretty much told, hey, we had no idea this guy was a lobbyist, but he absolutely is. And his lobbyist information was updated in January of this year. His name is Apollo Pazel, and we published a picture that was taken by Senator Steinmetz of a little pizza party in the Senate President's office. And you see in the picture Joey Correnti and Apollo Pazel. He's the one holding the pizza box. But he absolutely is a registered lobbyist, and he has been the entire time. I actually called him on the phone, and I said, hey, this is David with the Open Range Record, and I'd like to know, as a registered lobbyist, how you gained access to the Senate floor. And his reply to me was, well, after I'm done lobbying, then I'm a legislative aide. Now, you don't get to be both, Jack. You're a registered lobbyist, and that's what you do. And Dennis Biteman allowed you access to the Senate chamber. Now, the question becomes, what exactly was he doing on the Senate floor? What vote was he influencing? How many legislators did he talk to? How many different bills did he advocate for in his capacity as a registered Wyoming lobbyist? You see, we don't know that because Dennis Biteman wasn't honest about who he allowed access to the floor. So there's a great story on the Open Range Record, and this is a lot of fun being able to report from my own website. But here's the opening paragraphs of this, and I quote, there has been a lot of media coverage of the Wyoming House of Representatives this session. By comparison, little time has been dedicated to the goings-on in the legislature's upper chamber, including who influences its leadership. Apollo Pizzell, a Utah-based lobbyist registered with the Wyoming Secretary of State's office representing 3 organizations from Utah, Illinois, and Washington, D.C., has become ubiquitous in the Capitol building, often seen accompanying Senate President Dennis Biteman, Vice President Tim Salazar, and Majority Floor Leader Slithers Nethercott. Of course, it doesn't say Slithers, it says Tara. Over the past 2 years, on several occasions throughout the legislative session, Pizzell has been seen physically present within the Senate chambers during the session, and often in the office of Senate President Dennis Biteman. And there's several pictures of Mr. Pizzell in the chamber on the floor. But there's a whole bunch of other interesting stuff about Mr. Apollo Pizzell. Turns out he's kind of a Democrat activist. Yeah. All part of the No Kings protest. And I've got another picture that I've got to update this article with. But the truth is that it was Dennis Biteman that allowed this lobbyist access to the floor. Now, the whole thing, this whole check thing, everybody's all worried about. Did Rebecca Bechtel hand out a campaign check on the floor? Oh, and what influence did was she trying to leverage? What was she trying to do? And the media went into a frenzy. The whole time, Dennis Biteman has a lobbyist on the floor of the Wyoming Senate. The whole time. Now, not a question from the press was raised about who this guy actually is. It wasn't until the Open Range Record published, well, actually, it wasn't until Sherry Steinmetz published the picture of him, and then we dug into him really fast and wrote a quick piece. So the truth is, my friends, is that the attention of the press has been to protect the redcoats, the real redcoats, the people who pretend to be Republicans but really aren't. But my friends, a failure of the Wyoming media all the way around, and we shouldn't be at all surprised by any of this. None of this should shock us because they're all on the same team. Dennis, the media, Wildfile, Cowpie, all of them. They're all in it together. More when we come back. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Thursday. Phone lines are open, 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. If you want to be part of the program, talk to yours truly, go ahead and give me a call. One more time, that phone number is 307-374-8989. And during the break, my friends, breaking news. And this, again, should not surprise any of you, but the open range record and me, Cowboy State Politics, David at Cowboy State Politics, have just confirmed that Mr. Joey Correnti has not received any payments from the state of Wyoming, meaning he is not under the employ of the legislature, the Secretary of State's office, the Wyoming Capitol, the governor's office. He's not under the employ of any of them. In fact, it was just confirmed to me by the state auditor, Christy Racinas, and in fact, 0 payments have been made to him. We need to look into that because if he's not under the employ of the legislature, then how, pray tell, does he have access to all of the inner workings of the government, our government? Why is it that he gets to hang out in the Senate President's chamber just because Senate President Dennis Biteman employs somebody and signs them a check? Does not mean that that person gets access to all of our stuff. Now, it would be different if he actually was an employee of the state and was a legislative aide, but in this case, he's not. There's not a single payment from the state of Wyoming going to Mr. Correnti. It brings up a lot of questions, like Sherry mentioned last night on on the roundup. He's engaging in all sorts of political activity with the Wyoming Republican Party, rightly or wrongly. It doesn't really matter. He's been engaging in that, and he is present on the Senate floor in the Senate President's office. So please explain how all of that works, because it sure as heck looks shady to me. But yeah, so anyway, there you go. Confirmed by the state auditor's office that, in fact, there are no payments going to Joey Correnti, which means he got some splaining to do. All right, let's move on. And I've got another story that's a bit of a hometown type deal. And this one really, really made me angry. Now, if you remember a couple of years ago, Sergeant Nevada Krinke, a police officer with the Sheridan Police Department, was tragically murdered. Murder's kind of wrong. He was killed while serving a trespass warrant. And he was shot in the head by a guy who has had several run-ins with law enforcement. And it was a tragic deal. In fact, it went on for a long time. A house got destroyed. There was a big, long standoff with the police. And there is nothing that will bring together a community, and it's sad that it works this way, but there is nothing that will bring together a community like the tragic death of a police officer, the needless death of a police officer. And you can go pretty much anywhere in Sheridan, and you'll see stickers that bear Krinke's name in the windows of shops. When you go down Main Street, passing cars, you'll see the little badge sticker with the blue banner across it that has his name in it. The man had a wife. He has a family, young children, and none of those people are going to grow up with him. The kids aren't going to grow up with a father, and his wife isn't going to get to grow old with her husband. Now, yesterday, the Sheridan Press published an article about the SEPA bill. And about how all of the sheriffs and chiefs of police testified against this bill. This bill is bad. It's really not. It protects your Second Amendment rights, and it doesn't attack law enforcement. I should know because I helped write the original SEPA bill. But anyway, it doesn't attack law enforcement in any way. But the Sheridan Press ran an article not telling you the truth about the SEPA bill with Nevada Krinke's picture on it. Nevada Krinke didn't have anything to do with the SEPA bill. He didn't have anything to do with anything that's happening down here in the session, but the Sheridan Press used his picture because they know what a visceral response it will get from the Sheridan community. The truth is that event is still raw. Now I didn't know the man. I'm married to somebody that did. I'm friends with a lot of people that knew Officer Krinke. And I can tell you for a fact that event is still raw, and the Sheridan Press used his picture for politics. The Sheridan Press, along with all the rest of the media, are nothing but opportunists. That's what they are, my friends. And the truth is, they should absolutely be ashamed of themselves. And if they had any ethics or any feeling about them at all, they would run a retraction. They're not going to. And the reason I can tell you that is I asked for a comment from Ashley Snoozy, the editor. Yeah, what an unfortunate name. Anyway, I asked for a comment from her before I published the story yesterday. And, you know, my friends, we gotta stop paying attention to these news outlets that are not telling, and they're not even news. I struggle with telling them, using that word simply because that's what we've all grown up to refer to the newspaper. It's news, but it's not. None of it is. And the Sheridan Press proved it yesterday. Ashley Snoozy, anybody that, and I'm sure it's not Joseph that works for the Sheridan Press. He didn't write that article. But I did, by the way, I did walk over and show the reporter from the Sheridan Press the article I was going to publish before I did it. Just because trying to be decent, the Sheridan Press isn't decent to the people of Sheridan, nor are they decent to anybody else. In fact, they just use, and oh boy. And here we go again. Thank you, my beautiful wife. Christine just chimed in and said that the editor of the Sheridan Press, Ashley Snoozy, is married to a Sheridan police officer. And she still used the picture of Nevada Cranky. Kind of at a loss for words, my friends, which is kind of unusual for me. Man, dirty, dirty people. All right, well, let's move on. I'll update you if I hear anything back from Ashley Snoozy. Don't hold your breath on that one. It's probably not going to happen. Let's see here. Other stories that are on the front page of the Open Range Record. Well, I mean, I tell you what, you can go look at them yourself. I mean, there's a lot of good reporting that we've done. I'm very, very proud of the work that we've done. But I just realized that I forgot to play a couple little videos I have for you from the House floor last night. And I want to play one for you. And God, I'm so sick of talking about this check thing. But I mean, you have to know what happened because the press, the rest of the press isn't going to tell you. So here's a video from Representative Jamie Lean on the floor of the House of Representatives last night, right after the Super Special Investigative Committee finished their little report. Then the floor was opened up to debate on whether or not to accept the report. So here is what Representative Jamie Lean had to say, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a couple of questions in reviewing some of the materials, all of the materials that were found for this. Where's the written complaint?
Hold on.
If there was no written complaint, how did we get to this point? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a couple of questions in reviewing some of the materials, all of the materials that were found for this. Where's the written complaint? If there was no written complaint, how did we get to this point? When we talk about Joint Rule 22-1, we're also talking about the very process by which complaints are to be filed and which these are to be handled. Did the committee verify when and how the media was notified? Where is the text message to the media and why haven't we seen it? Did the committee review the accuser's interview with the media as well? These are the questions that I don't have answers to yet. Thank you.
And you never will, Representative.
Representative, any other?
Now, I'm going to try to get Representative Lean on the show tonight. I don't know if I'll be successful, but I would love to sit down and talk with her. And as it relates to the roundup tonight, we are going to have an episode at 7 o'clock. And one of the confirmed guests is Representative Gary Brown. I really like him. He is a very good person. Excuse me. Coffee went down the wrong tube. But anyway, Representative Brown's going to join the program. And I'll see if I can get Representative Lean on the show to talk about those questions that she doesn't have answers to. None of us have answers to them, and I doubt that any of us will ever have answers to them. But a big question is where exactly is the complaint? Well, there isn't one because it wasn't filled out, because Rule 22-1, another piece that the Open Range Record ran with. Where's the text message that Carly Provenza sent to the media? The reason why we don't have that one, and I'll tell you why, is because they sent it to Wildfile. And the reason why they sent it there is they knew that they could count on them to hold that picture until Wednesday, until Mike Yin could get up and give his little objection on the floor. But that's why they did that. And the reason they knew that is Representative Stohr gives a Wildfile a ton of money every year. In fact, there's a document in that article, I think. I'm pretty sure we published that. No, I know I did. It's a link to ProPublica in which Representative Stohr gave Wildfile $220,000. And from what Carly Provenza told the committee, that she consulted with Representative Stohr the night this all happened. So, of course, they sent it to Wildfile. And it tells you, and here's why they didn't send it to the cow pie. Now, I have a lot of arguments with Claire McFarland. I have a ton of arguments with the cow pie. In fact, they're not journalists. And I've tried to be friends with Claire McFarland, and I will still attempt to be at least cordial with her. But the reason they didn't send that picture to her is she would have published it Monday night. You could not have stopped Claire McFarland from publishing that picture. So they didn't send it to the cow pie. They didn't send it to anybody else except for Wildfile because they knew that they could get Wildfile to hold the story. Oh, Maggie Mullen, you're in this up to your eyeballs, and it would be better if you just admitted it. But the truth is, they're not going to. Now, the next video I want to play for you is Mike Yin. And you know what? This guy is... We ran a story. Now, let me just talk about this for a minute. You remember the night Chip gave his speech on the floor, which he talked about this whole thing. It's a great speech, and there's a great article on the Open Range Record about this. You can watch Chip's speech in there. But in that night, Mike Yin got up to the microphone, and it looked like, he didn't look like, he was remorseful what happened for a brief moment. And that's what we reported because, credit where credit is due. Well, no longer. We're not doing that anymore because Mike Yin is, he's in this up to his eyeballs too. But here's what he said on the floor, and then we'll talk about this on the other side. This one is fascinating because it shows you exactly how much of a political actor this guy is. Check it out.
Appreciate the committee's work. I didn't make the motion. I didn't make an accusation.
Yes, you did.
I said what I said based on knowledge that I had, and I spoke only to that knowledge. And so I very much appreciate what the committee did. And the committee, frankly, was in a really tough place, right? It's hard to investigate your colleagues. It really is. And so I'll speak on and for adoption of the committee report. On these accusations about filing ethics complaints, those are accusations right there that I or another person was unethical. But that's not a complaint. They just spoke it on the floor. That's because that's what we are allowed to do. I would say that those accusations are wrong because 22-1 very specifically says there is nothing that prohibits us.
It doesn't specifically say that.
Doing our legislative business outside of that ethics complaint rule. That ethics complaint rule is a good rule because, and frankly, I helped work on it.
I can't handle this guy anymore. Oh, as you can tell, it's don't blame me. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't issue an accusation. Bull crap. He absolutely did. And anybody that watches that video, which is, by the way, also available in that article that we published on the Open Range Record, he absolutely did. He knows darn good and well what Rule 22.1 says because he helped write it. The truth is, my friends, none of these people are being honest about any of this. All right, let's go ahead and take our second break, and we'll continue with the program when we come back. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Thursday, the last Thursday that I'm going to be down here in this miserable swamp because I'm going home and I'm about ready. Anyway, my friends, thank you for watching the program. Thanks for participating this entire session. It's been this has been my one respite in a very, very chaotic session. And, sitting here every morning getting to talk to you, I can't tell you what that means to me, what that's done. So I really appreciate it. All right, my friends, I've got a couple of stories here. And we covered the, let's see here. We covered the Sheridan Press. Oh, and by the way, one more comment, this one is a continual irritant for me. And maybe it's because, I have a written news outlet now with Rebecca. But let me just show you the story. So this is Wildfile's story from last night. And now I've taken out all the pictures because I don't want to waste ink on anything that Maggie Mullet publishes. But look at this. Okay. Hold on. So there's 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages. Now remember, there's no pictures in here. 3 pages. No pictures on this one. 4 pages, 5 pages, 6 pages, 7 pages, and a little bit more. So 7.5 pages, and almost all of it is a regurgitation of everything that's happened the last couple of weeks. And this is what counts for journalism in their book, and it's not in any way that. We try not to do that on the Open Range Record. In fact, I'm pretty sure my journalists are sick and tired of hearing me say one of my favorite lines from one of my favorite movies, A River Runs Through It. Remember the scene where they're doing their homework for their dad, and they bring him something they've written, and he takes out his red pencil and starts crossing stuff out, and he hands it back to him, and he says, "Again, half as long." I'm sure all of my journalists are tired of hearing me say that, but I don't see any reason why you should be bored to tears with articles that are 7.5 pages long. I don't like doing that. I just want, hey, just give me the news, give me the facts. I don't care about the rest of it. I've already read that about half a dozen times. So we don't do that at the Open Range Record. Though I will admit, there are a couple of stories that are kind of long. I wrote a couple of them, but it's because they have to be to give you the full picture. All right, so there's another guy who has jumped in the electoral circus, and he's a county commissioner from Douglas, Converse County. Yeah, I think it's in Douglas. Robert Short, but he also happens to be the vice president of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. And, I don't know if you know this or not, because we really didn't cover this on the show, but they are a really liberal group of people. And just so happens, I have a copy of all of the bills that they were in favor of and the ones that they weren't in favor of. You see, they have this big meeting, and all of them vote on all the legislation. And I mean, they allegedly vote. I don't know if they really do. And let me give you this little fact about the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. The president of the WCCA is a Democrat from Jackson. In fact, at her election, she was the only person nominated to lead that organization. Now think about this. Most county commissioners, in fact, the vast majority of county commissioners in the state of Wyoming are Republicans. Why? Because it's really hard to be elected if you're honest about your political inclinations. It's tough to get elected being a Democrat in this state. And so the only person nominated was a Democrat from Teton County. And so that room full of I don't even know how this works. How can you be a Republican and be in favor of a Democrat leading your organization? I would think that even if you were, short on candidates and you weren't able to find anybody that wanted to do the job, you could at least nominate somebody. I mean, whether or not they're going to win, I mean, don't just give it to the Democrat, but they all did. Weird. So anyway, this guy named Robert Short, he is the vice president of the County Commissioners Association. And he's going to run for Secretary of State. And I got to tell you, I have a bunch of stuff we're going to tell you about this guy. In fact, I'm pretty sure I already have him on video. And just a warning to all of you redcoats. The reach of cowboy state politics and the open range record is pretty big. And it's not. And here's why. Because it's the citizens of Wyoming that are sick and tired to death of being run by Democrats. We are tired of it. If you're a Republican, say so. If you're a Democrat, own it. We've had lots of Democrat governors, and if you're a good candidate, I'm pretty sure if you run a good campaign, you could probably get elected somewhere. But you don't have to lie to your people. But the reason why this program and the open range record has such a reach is I tell people the truth. Right, wrong, or indifferent. And by the way, to prove it, we've published some articles that were not so favorable of Republicans during this session. But the reason why we've got such a big reach is all of you. And I cannot tell you how many times during a week I'm getting notes from all over the state. And unfortunately, I just don't have the staff yet to cover it. But that's coming, my friends. I have a feeling that in a couple of months, there are going to be a whole bunch of people that are doing some work for the open range record. It's just a hint. I wouldn't know that for sure. But I bet you're going to start seeing a whole bunch of stuff on our website. So this here's what Wildpile, and again, we can't trust anything that comes from Maggie Mullen, and actually, I don't think this one was written by Maggie Mullen. She's just my favorite punching bag this morning. All right, so here's what it says. Douglas resident is the first candidate of either party to announce a bid for a seat since Secretary of State Chuck Gray says he's running for the U.S. House. The issues you care about are up for debate at the legislative session. Oh, that is a stupid ad. Elected to Converse County Commission in 2014, so he's been on there for over 10 years. The Glen Rock High School graduate, who now resides in Douglas, has publicly announced his campaign for Secretary of State. While not addressing Gray's tenure directly or mentioning the incumbent by name, his announcement did focus on fair and accountable handling of elections. Many of Gray's efforts as Secretary of State have been promoting legislation related to, and they put this in quotation marks, this is what the frickin' media does. Anyway, election integrity. Yeah, because we know who Wildfile is. So let's see here. As a Wyoming Republican, I quoted, this is what he says. As a Wyoming Republican, that is your first clue that maybe we ought to look into this jackwagon. Anyway, I'm deeply committed to the principles of smaller government, lower taxes, and free markets and the Constitution. I hold an unshakable belief in helping people and have dedicated much of my life to service, Short said. The Secretary of State is charged with duties that first and foremost require an unwavering commitment to follow rules that build trust. Okay, more drivel. But that first sentence, if you live in Douglas, I want to know if that first sentence is in any way close to the truth. Let me repeat it for you. As a Wyoming Republican, don't worry, we'll look into what the positions that he's advocated for. I'm deeply committed to the principles of smaller government, lower taxes. That one's going to be easy to verify. Remember, Vice Chairman of the County Commissioners Association, I bet there's a bunch of tax bills they weren't in favor of. Anyway, free markets and the Constitution. You don't suppose that the Converse County commissioner has been in favor of picking winners and losers in his county, do you? You don't suppose that he's given money to nonprofits. I mean, I'm just throwing stuff out there. I don't know if any of this is true. But anyway, these associations, and this is another bill that really sent me through the roof because some Republicans voted against it. But all of these, if you hear the word association, that means it's a private lobbying organization. Association does not mean government. And your tax dollars, to huge amounts, are given to these associations so that your elected officials can be part of these lobbying organizations. So in other words, your money, your tax dollars are used to lobby against your best interests. And again, when we're going to do that story about all the positions of the county commissioners, you're going to find out that they're not in favor of helping you, nor are they in favor of lower taxes or free markets or anything like this. But your money goes to pay for these, and it's the County Commissioners Association, it's the Wyoming Association of Municipalities, it's the Assessors Association, the Treasurers Association, the Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police. All of those things get your tax money because these elected officials, they have to be able to join these associations. It's bullcrap, and it's so dirty. And to the tune and statewide, these associations get millions of your tax dollars. My favorite one is the NAGS. I'm not even joking. The National Association of Attorneys General. Okay, we only have one attorney general, but we pay $75,000 a year. Let me repeat that. $75,000 a year for him to be part of a group called the NAGS. And if you look into that group, they're fantastic. They're lawyers, so they're all pretty well liberal. And what this group does is they take up cases and they take a giant percentage of the money to fund their little lobbying organizations. So across the state, there's a huge amount of money that goes to all of these lobbying organizations, and it's all your money. It's all tax dollars, and it's an incredible amount of money. In fact, we did an article early on in the session about these associations and that bill that was killed. And like I said, there were some Republicans, some conservatives that voted against that bill. So, go check it out. And the names are listed in there. And this is a bad deal, my friends. Absolutely bad. All right, so let's take our last break. And then when we come back, we'll finish up the show. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. but you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
This program is only going to get stronger. Cowboy State Politics Live, the Cowboy State Politics Podcast, the Open Range Record. You know, are you getting the feeling that maybe you can't avoid the truth that is coming out of this program? It's absolutely true, my friends, and hopefully the Redcoats are starting to see it. Probably not. They probably don't care because they are too interested in their own propaganda. By the way, politics is kind of a funny thing. There are a lot of funny things that happen, and we're going into an election season. And candidates, man, this is like the Super Bowl for me. Not so much for the lovely Christine, because it kind of puts a damper on our summer. It's kind of a rule, like if you're involved in politics, if it's an election year, don't make any plans because you don't know what's going to happen. But candidates say some of the dumbest stuff, and it's a tremendous amount of fun. Well, on April 18th, the Campbell County Republican women are hosting Kyle Mann from the Babylon Bee. He's a funny guy. I'm sure just about everybody has seen a post from the Babylon Bee. Interestingly enough, they're way more accurate than the Wyoming media, and super, super funny. But he's going to be in Gillette on April 18th. And if you want tickets to go to the show, I highly suggest it. It's going to be a blast. Go to CampbellCountyRepublicanWomen.com and you can get tickets and you can get all the information there. It's going to be a blast. And I'm going to try to carve out some time to go, and it'll be fun. Politics is fun. Politicians are funny, and they're easy to make fun of. So April 18th, Gillette. Campbell County Republican Women, Kyle Mann from the Babylon Bee. All right, my friends. Well, we've got 2 more days, today and tomorrow, of the legislative session. And they did have a couple of days left over from the general session. In fact, they had 3. Now, why this is so important is that if the legislature is in session, the governor has 3 days. Is it 3 or 5 days? Can't remember. Anyway, he only has a small amount of days to sign a piece of legislation or to veto it. And the more important ones, the legislature tries to stay in session. So if he kills one of their bills, they're around town to overturn his veto. But if the legislature is not in session, or if they don't have enough days, well, then the governor can do whatever he wants, and he can veto anything. Now, if the legislature has gone home, they've checked out, they're back home with their families, then the governor has 15 days to sign or to veto any piece of legislation. And so when you get down towards the end of the session, those extra days are kind of important. Now, last year, the Senate checked out early, which is an interesting story. We've got one that I'm going to publish this morning that is about how much time the Senate has wasted. You see, a couple nights ago, they left, and this was the night of the pizza party, the now infamous. Oh, and by the way, I got to tell you this part. You should go back and watch the issue of the Roundup, or the episode of the Roundup we did last night with Sherry Steinmetz. She goes into great detail about that picture and how the Senate actually had a caucus meeting, which, by the way, they don't have caucuses in the Senate. There's no Republican, Democrat. They all meet together, which what it is a meeting so they can plan what they're going to do to you without the prying eyes of YouTube and the media. Well, anyway, they had a caucus meeting over a Facebook photo. I'm not even kidding you. I'm totally not. They threatened to censure Senator Steinmetz over a Facebook photo. And there were also rumors that Dennis Biteman was going to hold a press conference to address what he called fake news. Oh my God. Why? I mean, how thin of skin does that guy have? I don't think that any of us can possibly measure it. But come on, a Facebook picture? You got caught red-handed, and now you're trying to explain away your misdeeds. Well, anyway, that's not going to fly with Wyoming citizens. And when it comes to elections, Dennis, you're better off just going home because we are going to mock you relentlessly. And all of the bad stuff that you've done is going to come out. And I cannot wait to be the first one in line because Dennis, unfortunately, is my senator. So, yeah, he didn't talk to me. He hadn't talked to me for a really long time. Probably because he's afraid of the truth. But anyway, yeah, so Facebook photos really irritate old Dennis. And I can't tell you how happy that makes me that he finds that very hard to deal with. Anyway, my friends, we pretty much burned up another busy broadcast hour on the program. And well, we got one more that we're going to do tomorrow. And then I am going back home to see my beautiful wife, the lovely Christine, and the puppies, and get away from this dirty, nasty swamp. All right, my friends. Well, that'll do it for today's installment of the broadcast. Have a good rest of your week. I'm going to publish a podcast right after this. And if you missed this show, I'm just going to replay the whole thing so that you can get the full experience of it. But for now, from the depths of the middle swamp, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.